Another information overload this weekend with Donald Trump. There is simply too much to process and too much to report, so we'll center our focus on this moronic Muslim ban. This is We the People. Now let's begin with talking about terrorism in general. A simple definition of terrorism is a violent act designed to instill terror or fear into a given community, or a violent act to drive the political discourse to favor one group over another. Webster's defines it as the use of terror as a form of coercion. But why define it, you ask? Well, there's two simple reasons. One is that terrorism comes in many forms, and the second is that under these definitions, Donald Trump could be defined as a terrorist. On December 16th of last year, Dylann Roof was found guilty of multiple counts of murder. He shot almost a dozen churchgoers for the purpose and with the hope that he could incite a race war against blacks. This is terrorism. But we as a people and the media as a whole never calls an act like this terror. Since 1993, 11 people have been murdered in direct relation to abortion clinics in this country. The most notable being George Tiller, an abortion provider who was gunned down in his own church for providing abortion services in Kansas. This was, and I know this will set some people off, this was, without a doubt, an act of radical Christian terrorism. Yeah, I said it. And you can go screw yourself if you object, because when you murder people directly because of your God, or your faith requires it, or you think it requires an action of that kind, you are a religious terrorist. The KKK in the South, a movement with a strong foundation in the Christian religion, has been identified as a terrorist organization. A recent study puts the estimated number of people killed by the KKK over the last 100 years at 3,960. But that's actually a vague estimate. The number can't factually be substantiated very well, because we all know there have been plenty of killings committed by the KKK over the last 100 years that have not been validated to be KKK by the authorities. So one can only guess, and a decent guess would be that the murders number in the thousands. The Dylann Roof murders could be construed as KKK. But let's not get lost. Based on the information alone, the KKK could be and should be declared as a terrorist organization and be banned by the federal government. Make no bones about it, an organization which actually sanctions murder is a terrorist organization. If it sanctions violence against a people, it's a terrorist organization. If it calls for the segregation or elimination of a people by race, religion, ethnic center, whatever you call it, it's a terrorist organization. And the federal government should designate it as such, and they should ban its organization, they should ban its symbols, they should ban its representations in all forms. But they will not. One has to ask. A double standard? Are we really going to sit here and say it isn't possible for Christians to be terrorists? I make this point not to ignite your anger at my maligning your faith. I make this point to show that Islam is not the only religion in which lunatic fringe groups will resort to violence to further their cause. And this isn't a thesis against Christianity. I am simply making the point. And if you don't think it's a valid point, then you're a little snowflake with your head so far up your ass that you're part of the problem. But Donald Trump's Muslim ban. And I don't give a damn what Trump talking heads will say on CNN or Fox or MSNBC. It is a Muslim ban. Let's examine it. The countries included in this ban are as follows: Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Syria, Sudan, and Yemen. It's an interesting list for a couple of reasons. Now, what countries were involved in the 9/11 hijackers? Where did those hijackers come from? Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Egypt. Well, that's curious. They're not on the list. Where was the San Bernardino killers from? Well, the man was an American who was born here, and his wife was a Pakistani immigrant who was actually born in Saudi Arabia. Interesting. The knife-wielding lunatic in the Midwest Mall who stabbed 10 people? Well, he was an American-born citizen of Somali heritage. The Orlando shooter, another American-born citizen of Pakistani heritage. The infamous shoe bomber, an American-born citizen. In other words, not one person who immigrated from any of the countries on Donald Trump's ban have committed one single terrorist act within the confines of the United States. Not one. So Trump is going to ban immigration from countries which so far have never produced a single terrorist act on American soil. Now, that's not to say they haven't committed terrorist acts elsewhere, because you could go down through the history and find some, I'm sure. But the question is, why these countries? And why not other countries? And to that, what about the countries that are not on the list? Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Lebanon. Why aren't they on the list? Well, there could be two reasons. One is that these countries have friendly relations, or they're allies with the United States. The other, simply put, Donald Trump has business interests in these countries, and he does. And one can surmise that he doesn't want to piss them off. But screw everybody else. Now let's talk about the religious aspect of it. Trump's talking heads will tell you that this is not a religious ban. It's a regional ban. Well, it's not a region when you select countries that are in the same region, but exclude countries that are in the same region. You can't call it a Middle East ban if Saudi Arabia is not included in it. Trump said himself on Fox News and on the Christian Broadcast Network that he intends to direct the State Department and the immigration office to favor Christians over Muslims. Sounds like a religious test to me. Why does this matter? Because this ban is unconstitutional on two grounds. One, the Constitution specifically states that we will not exclude immigrants from any specific country of origin. And another violation is to show religious preference, which is in direct conflict to the First Amendment's clause on the separation of church and state, among other things within the Constitution. But I'm not a constitutional authority, nor am I a constitutional lawyer. Someone else will have to get into it. Pick up the phone and call the ACLU. They'll be more than happy to explain it. So my argument is this. The ban is unconstitutional and clearly shows Trump has an agenda, and that agenda is to favor his business interest and to favor one religion over another, and this cannot stand. We cannot permit this. But then there's another agenda, and that is fear. You see, this is where I say that Donald Trump could be considered a terrorist, and I'll tell you why. You don't have to commit a violent act to instill terror in a people. All you have to do is get them to fear to the point where they will do something or act out in a way which benefits your agenda. For instance, if I told you that the guy across the street has been telling me that he's going to rape and murder your daughter, and I keep telling you this, eventually you may take physical action against your neighbor to defend your family. That's not an unreasonable thing, but you simply took my word on it, that you simply decided that because I told you this, that you needed to act. Now, did I directly threaten your family? No. Did I cause harm to anyone in the neighborhood? No. But I used an undue influence of physical terror upon your family to frighten you into an action which violates the constitutional rights and the physical well-being of another person. That's terror. When the KKK talks about black women or black men sleeping with white women and that something needs to be done about it, and they influence other white men to do something to black men because they don't want black men sleeping with white women, that's a form of terror. It's terror by hate. It's to justify a certain cause or action through a fear of the unknown or violence. So when Donald Trump alienates us, America, Americans, his followers, and his voters into believing that all Muslims are evil and we must ban them, and he said this on the campaign trail, he is inflicting a terror philosophy upon us. It is terror by propaganda, not by violence. He is instilling a fear in us that, although may be justified by actions committed by certain individuals, but he is trying to instill a fear in us upon an entire group of people. The Muslims, anyone who is of Islam. But you see, he doesn't even believe his own lie. And the proof is in this ban. Because if he truly believed that all Islamists and all Muslims were evil and were going to cause terror and kill everybody in the United States if they can just get here, then he would ban all Muslims from every country and every place upon this planet. And he would not selectively pick 7 countries that have never committed the crime of terror in our country. Just based on logical thought, this ban is moronic. It's ridiculous. It is incredibly insane. Because if you're going to take an action to protect the United States of America and the people that live within its borders by systematically eliminating the transport and the immigration of a certain class of people from this country, beyond the fact that it's unconstitutional. If you're going to do that, then you do it the proper way. You ban them all from everywhere, regardless of country of origin. Now, that would still be unconstitutional, in my opinion, because you're systematically eliminating a segment of the population by religious belief, and that's unconstitutional. But let's just throw that away for a minute and just take the Islam or the Muslim factor and say all Muslims are terrorists, which is what Donald Trump will have you believe, and say none of them. Well, there's a simple way around that if you happen to be a Muslim. I'm not a Muslim. You just simply say, I'm not a Muslim. And this is where it gets complicated, because now Donald Trump has to ban travel from all countries that have Muslims in it. Well, there are Muslims in Britain. There are Muslims in France and Germany. There are Muslims in this country. Plenty of them. One of our congressional representatives, a man by the name of Keith Ellison, is a Muslim. This ban is moronic. Already the ACLU, among other legal representation, are taking actions against this ban in an effort to put an end to it and stop Donald Trump in his tracks. And thousands of people are protesting all over the country to protest this egregious policy, this unconstitutional act. And this brings us back to a question that's been asked for months. Is Donald Trump a fascist? Well, when you segregate people based upon race or religion and the country that they come from, you certainly look like a fascist, and you sound like one. And if it walks like a duck, if it talks like a duck, it's Donald Trump. And at the very least, if you're not a fascist, you're just a bigot. I'd like you to ask you to subscribe to the channel and join us on our Facebook page. If you'd like to become a patron, www.patreon.com/WTP America. If you want to tell me that I'm a Nazi or a communist or simply call me an asshole, email me at WTPAmerica@hotmail.com. This is We the People. Resist.